The first of these two questions is asking us if a function is increasing or decreasing on a given interval. So to check that out, I'm going to add in a graph on my Inspire calculator. So I go to New Document and add in that graph. I'm going to go ahead and plot my equation. And there it is. And let's just try this by looking at it, right? Um, it wants to know if we're going up or down, basically, from my y values. Is it increasing or decreasing between two different x values? So the x values it's giving us is -6 and -3. So if I look at my tick marks here for my x-axis, this is -1, move over to -2, -3, -4, -5, and -6. So my graph, when x equals -6, it's going to be right around here. So that would be where my y value would be for that as well. And we want to go from our left to my right to get to where x equals -3. So as we move to my right, I want to figure out, are we going up or down? So we're moving to my right. This is where x would equal maybe -5, x would be -4, x would be -2, I'm sorry, -3, down here off our graph. And it's clear that our graph is decreasing as we move from x equals -6 to x equals -3. Now, if it's not so obvious by looking at it, you could also pull up your table. And to do that, I go to Menu, View, and then down to Show Table. And on my left side are all my x values. And on my right side here, this column is all the y values. So we want to check out what's happening to the y values when x is -6 and then as it moves to -3. So I arrow up to get to -6, and it looks like the y value is at 4. Well, now as we move from -6 down to -3, my y value changed to -8. So from 4 to -8, that's obviously decreasing. So again, that just confirms what we saw when we were looking at the graph visually. Now let's do that second question. I'm going to hit Control and then T to get rid of my table. Oops, I need to select this area first. So I go Control T to get rid of my table, and then I'm going to hit Delete 3 times in a row, and that deletes my graph. Now I'm going to add in my new function. So I hit Tab, bring up my entry line, and I go ahead and graph that, which is x squared minus 4x minus 3. Okay, hit Enter, and there's this graph. And we want to figure out on what interval is our graph increasing and what interval of the domain is our graph decreasing. So let's start with increasing. And over here on the right side, you can see as we move from left to right, my y values are increasing, correct? So we want to figure out what's the x value where they start to increase. And you can't see all your graphs, so we want to move it up a little bit, right? So I move my cursor into the free area right here, and then I press and hold, and it moves it up, right? So we want to figure out the turning point right here. To do that, we could find what the minimum value is, or we could figure out what the vertex is. Let's go to Menu, and we'll go to Analyze Graph, and then we're going to select our minimum, and it says lower bound, and when it says lower bound, we want to move to the left of our vertex. So I click over here, and then it says upper bound, we want to move to the right of my vertex. Click again, and there's my vertex. It says 2 comma -7. So the value of 2 represents the x right here. So from x moving on to the right, our graph is increasing. So we would say 2 comma, and it's going towards positive infinity, all the way on forever. Now, where is it, around what interval is it decreasing? Well, you can see over here, as we move from left to right, our y values are decreasing. So it's decreasing until we get to that x value of 2 again. So then we would say from -infinity to 2, that's where our graph is decreasing. So that would be the interval that we would use for a decreasing function. Well, that part of this function that's decreasing, I should say.